everything that he ever wanted. One day he lost everything that meant anything to him. He was heartbroken, but he didn't doubt or blame God. No one could understand how he could still love God. But God had saved this man's life, but taken his material possessions. This man wanted to share what God had done for him. He said the spirit within him compelled him. This man's name was Job. We're a lot like Job, aren't we? We find ourselves in sticky situations, but how do we respond? Do we become so overwhelmed that God is with us that we are compelled to share it? This year's theme is compelled by love. This doesn't automatically happen, but is a growing process. I want to share with you a few building blocks on how to become compelled by God's love. 2 Corinthians 5:13-14 says, "For if we are beside ourselves, it is for God, or if we have a sound mind, it is for you. For the love of Christ compels us." The key thread to becoming compelled by love is giving God everything, no matter the circumstances. This leads us to our first building block. So we said that the key is to give God everything. We can do this through God filling us. Hebrews 12:29 says, "For our God is a consuming fire." God's love should fill up every part of us. Sidewalk Prophets has a song called "You Can Have Me." The chorus says, "When did love become unmoving? When did love become unconsuming? Forgetting what the world has told me, Father of love, you can have me." How many of us have someone or something that we love? That person or thing ends up taking up most of our time. But how much time do you and I spend letting God and His Word take up our time? As we're going through the process of filling ourselves with godly things, we should become beside ourselves. This is our second building block to become compelled. The first part of 2 Corinthians 5:13 says, "For if we are beside ourselves, it is for God." Now Paul was writing this to the Corinthian church as a description of being devoted to the truth. He was so devoted that the religious leaders called him an insane fanatic. How many of you like the Yankees? If I came to you to argue about how they're a horrible team, wouldn't you argue with me? You would disagree. You would openly tell me how they're such a good team, etc. But how many of us do that with God? How many openly and unashamed stand up for Him, even though we may be called insane fanatics? So God should consume our lives, which will cause us to become devoted to Him and His Word. But it doesn't stop here. We also need to have a sound mind. The third and final building block comes from the second part of 2 Corinthians 5:13. "If we have a sound mind, it is for you." If you have a sound mind, you are acting in a calm manner, always under control. Romans 12:9-21 gives us a list of traits that characterize a spirit-filled life. The bottom line, though, is that our lives should reflect Christ's love to everyone. Not only should Christ be reflected in the good times, but also in the bad. I know that when I get into bad situations, I flip out and try to handle things myself, but that only makes matters worse. People see that God is in control when things are going well, but not when things are going bad. The truth is, God is always supposed to be in control, but my life doesn't always reflect that. Does yours? So my challenge to Christians is to get your focus back on God. Let Him handle your situations. Let His love consume every part of your life, and don't be ashamed of His love. Declare it openly. Whatever you're going through or will be, remember, let God handle it and act in a Christ-like manner. To the unsaved, you can't let God control your problems until you allow Him into your life. You need to make room for Him before He can work in you. If you let God into your life, He can then begin to consume you. He wants to take all the junk in your life upon Himself. That is why He died for you. No matter our circumstances, God's love should always be reflected. So let God have everything so that you may be filled. And remember, God's love compelled Him to die.